The information presented in this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not meant to be a substitute for clinical mental health treatment. If you or someone you know is experiencing a mental health crisis, please dial 988 or head to your nearest emergency room.
Welcome to the Black People Die by Suicide 2 podcast, where we discuss all things mental health with an emphasis on suicide in the Black community. I'm your co-host, T-Kea.
And I'm your co-host, Jordan.
So we've added two new formats, or not formats, I'm sorry. We added two new segments to our podcast. So one is self-care, where we will discuss what we're doing in terms of self-care and what we're planning to do, and just making sure that we're being really intentional about practicing self-care. Me and Jordan, we want to make sure that we're holding each other accountable.
Yes.
And also encouraging people within the community to practice self-care. And then we also added the community change maker segment, where we will highlight mental health professionals such as therapists, social workers, certified peer support specialists, etc., because we want to make sure that we're highlighting specifically Black mental health professionals and letting people know that there are professionals that look like them that can be of a great support. So, before we jump into today's topic, with every episode, we always do a check in to see how we're doing and what's going on, because again, we want to also make sure we're being in tune and intentional about what's currently going on. So, I guess I'll start.
Go ahead.
So, I am doing fantastic. It has been a lot happening, a lot going on in reference to the podcast. We've been doing a lot of speaking events, and people are responding really well. But I feel like it's also been very overwhelming sometimes with talking about suicide, even though it's something that I'm very comfortable talking about. It gets heavy, and sometimes I have moments of getting really emotional, and so I have to make sure that I'm being intentional about checking with myself to make sure that I'm doing okay. But overall, I'm excited. How are you?
You know what? I feel the same. I am feeling very, very overwhelmed by the amount of support that we've been receiving thus far. And it makes me, really happy that we're carrying out this mission of having this conversation about suicide. But it is really heavy. People have been sharing their stories with us about, their own personal experiences, or maybe someone that they know, a family member, a friend experiencing some mental health challenges, suicidal ideation, suicide attempts. So it's very important that we, like you said, make sure we're practicing self care, making sure that we're staying on top of, our own stuff as we, learn about other people's stories as well. So, but you know what? I'm very grateful, very grateful.
Yes. So on today's episode, we are joined by the amazing, because I've been following her for some while, and she did a Fireflies event back in my heyday when I first started. Elise Antoine, who is a social worker, and she is the founder of Rip the Stigma, which is a nonprofit organization that encourages the community to speak up about mental health challenges and share their stories in order to peel off the stigma attached to mental health. So I have to check in with Elise, have to check in with you because you're a part of this conversation. So you have to join the conversation with checking in terms of how you're doing.
Yes, Elise, how are you doing today?
Thank you for having me and thank you for checking in. Checking in is so important. I would have to say, like, today's been a good day, but it's been an extremely busy season for me because I'm a school social worker. So we are counting down the days. But I actually was able to have a great weekend. After I'm done, I'm going to have some amazing food and sneak in a little nap. So far, so good. I'm really excited to be with you both.
Yes, that is fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited to have you. So, for today's
Yes.
topic, we brought Elise on. We're really excited to have her today, primarily because, as Black people, we are a very diverse group of people. We come from all over the world. We have different, cultural experiences, different backgrounds, different foods, different languages. And we wanted to capture not only the experience of, African Americans who are, just here from the States, but Elise is of Haitian descent. So we would love to get her perspective on mental health and suicide in the Haitian community. So Elise, we welcome you. Want to start with the questions?
Sure. So tell us about yourself.
Okay, so thank you again for having me. I am a social worker. I've been a social worker for 18 years this month. I'm also Haitian American. I was born here in Jersey.
Hey,
Immigrants.
Jersey girl.
My mother and father were born in Haiti, and they made it their business, especially my mom, to know what my culture is about. I went to Haiti just learning, and just being the only girl, you literally had no choice. You had to learn how to cook, clean, do all the women duties and all that other stuff. So it can be a little sexist, but just growing up in the culture, and that's a lot of things that I do when it comes to mental health and suicide. Those are two stigmatized issues, and it's there's still more education that needs to be happening because there's a big shame in the community, the Haitian community. When things happen, they tend to keep things hush hush
Mhm.
within the family. They suppress, and they don't feel comfortable or even frown upon, like, oh, therapy is only for crazy. So there's a lot of work that I've been really working hard to get across. But I love what I do, and I make it known that, like, it's okay to talk about these things because we have to. And I think it probably shocked a lot of people, being that I'm a two-time suicide survivor. It was quite shocking for the community.
Yeah, so it sounds like similar to, my experience. Doesn't sound like suicide or mental health in general was a topic of discussion while you were growing up.
Absolutely not. It really
Mhm.
was not until I was facing my own. And that's when, my family, I'm grateful for the way that we came together as a family to talk. But before then, I guess that's why I kind of kept it to myself. I didn't want to burden my family, and I didn't want to hurt them. So I kind
Mhm.
of protected them in a way. I thought it was protection. But in reality, they really wanted to know what was going on. So it's through my own experience, it opened the door for us to really talk about it. And I got the support from them, and I got an opportunity to educate them as well.
Would you
Nice.
would you say that that influenced you to become a social worker?
No, like, I think being a social worker was a gift. Like, people tend to enjoy talking to me, and I literally just knew what to tell them. Even I felt like I had a lot of wisdom growing up, and it just became natural. But one thing in particular, a friend that was in a domestic violence situation, I didn't understand why she kept going back. And I was
Mhm.
very curious and a little furious too, because I was always helping her and I didn't understand. So when I had the opportunity to volunteer, my first internship was with the YWCA, and I did a paper. I was more understanding of the whole cycle of violence, and I was like, this is for me. And that was the confirmation there.
Yes, I was talking about that earlier. I feel like helping professions, it's a calling. You answer the
Mhm.
call. Like we were built for this, we were
Absolutely.
made for this. So I totally understand. So what type of messages did you hear growing up about mental health?
Oh, I mean, being that I'm also a woman of God, I'm a Christian, I felt like conflicted, confusing messages. Like, almost like I felt like I'm the one who brought it onto me. Like,
Mm,
depression and anxiety, I brought it onto me, and I had to, like, pray it through. And, or just being Haitian, I have a roof over my head. I have a bed to sleep in. I have food to eat. So there shouldn't be any depression or anxiety. I should be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very conflicting because then you feel like something is wrong with me. Am I
mm,
really causing this? Is it me? And I really struggled with that. And I'm like, wait, my personality, I'm naturally happy, positive, and bubbly. Like, my personality did not match the
Mm-hmm.
darkness and sadness that lied within. It did not.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't put one and two together, that it was really stemming from this treasure box of being molested and not ever talking about it. That was one of the roots to my battles.
Yes, same. I definitely identify with you. I had a lot of people tell me, well, just be happy. And I'm like, if it was
Mm,
that simple, I wouldn't be in this situation. You know what I mean? I wish it was a switch
right.
I could turn on and be okay, but that was not
Mm,
reality for me. And I too had experiences with, inappropriate touching and inappropriate sexual behavior. So I definitely
mhm.
identify with that.
Yeah, and you know what I would also like you to speak to in reference to how many Haitians believe that like a mental illness is the result of like when me and Jordan was doing some research, we said some people in the Haitian community view it as like sent spirits or
Oh,
like
yes.
can you kind of like speak to that?
Yes. I mean, everything is the blame of everything. Like,
Mm-hmm.
whenever there's something, it might be like, oh, there's witchcraft, which witchcraft exists, but everything could be like demonic. Okay, so there's a demon or Lucifer is living inside you. You're
Mm,
possessed. It's always around that. Or like I was saying before, your prayer life and your relationship with God is not strong enough. That's why you don't have the authority, and you're really feeling like this is what's happening. So is there something like I had to learn, like you are a woman of God. You pray, but you can still have depression and anxiety
Mm-hmm.
and still learn how to manage that and cope and get the assistance, like seeing a therapist, having a life coach, having mentors and accountability, and go to church and still have all those support and be a professional, because literally I help people for a living. But people's opinion really daunts that. So yes, sometimes the Haitian community feels like it's not you, and they feel like when they pray or they have to put their hands on you, there's something that's coming out of you, and it's not always like that. I do believe that there are times where we have to fight in the spirit. When I mean that, that means there's sometimes I don't feel like getting out of bed. Okay, I'm like, I don't want to stay in bed all day. I can't go by my feelings, but that's the fight where I have to be like, Elise, we have to get up. Like, we have to find a way. Okay, I might need some help. Like, mom, today I need some motivation. Do you think you can help me? I might need to ask for help some days. Some days I got this. Some days I'm not okay, and I want to just sleep a little bit longer. It doesn't mean I'm lazy, because that was the thing growing up
Mm-hmm.
as a Haitian woman is you're not allowed to stay in bed too long. You got to wake up
mm,
early. You got to clean. You got to do work. And I didn't know how to rest. I just kept doing
Mm-hmm.
and doing. And I became a workaholic. As an adult, I had to learn what true rest and sitting in stillness. Until this day, I'm still mastering that, because it's this constant worrying, like, am I doing enough? Is it enough? And I realized where I got that from. My mom, she was just a worrier, and she was a hardworking woman, but she thought that's what it was, and it just got transferred onto me. So breaking generational curses is very important as well.
Ooh, girl, that's a sermon.
that was
I
a
can
word.
identify.
Okay.
I have a very hard time sitting down.
Oh, yes, she does. Yes, she does.
Just go ahead and put me on
She
blast.
does.
I don't know when to chill out sometimes. So when you were
Mhm.
saying that, you were really, really speaking like to me, because it's like you have to be conscious to know when like, okay, I'm doing a little bit too much. Let me pull back. And it can
Mhm.
be very hard. And I know a lot of that is rooted in trauma. So I'm so glad that you know I feel seen, heard, and validated. I'm not alone in this fight.
You're not really.
Yes, to my mother, she's still like this to this day. If rest is laziness, she has to be doing something.
Mhm.
If I'm in the bed and it's like 9 o'clock, you need to get up and do something productive with yourself. My rest is productive.
Right.
I feel
Mhm.
like my rest is
Yes.
productive.
Resting is being
Yes,
productive.
Yes.
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Um, can you speak to the work that you're doing with your amazing nonprofit, Rip the Stigma? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I mean, I literally had to face myself in order to do this because I was hiding my own depression and anxiety. There was a lot of shame, and then God was like, "I want you to start a nonprofit." I said, "Oh, word, God, that's cool." And then he was like, "Yeah, you gotta share your story." I said, "What?" So I was like so terrified, but I literally had to face myself. I shared my story, and I've been sharing my story and just educating the community. I mean, Rep the Stigma's for everyone, but there is an asterisk for the Haitian community because I feel like I've been led to really pour into it. So I started this, movement called the Haitian trauma. When it comes to like, there's a lot of emotional abuse that we don't acknowledge and we normalize that
Mhm.
that really transfers on. So I really been working towards having a safe space where we could talk about trauma, and it's open for everyone, but just I'm going to be like specifically like really shredding apart the different traumas and the different cultures and nationalities because it's time for Caribbeans to like literally open up. And that could just be anything: Haitians, Jamaican, Africans, you know, Dominicans, we just need to just open up and start talking because at the end of the day, we all can identify. And I just feel like I'm opening up the conference where it can just be, indigenous people, Caribbean people, us black coming together to talking about how trauma affects us so we can really understand that our stories may be different.
Mm-hmm.
And I do events for men, women, teenagers, but there's always an opportunity for people to share their stories. Very important that we speak up, we open up, because there's so much shame, like you shouldn't. I was always told, no, 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 no. And I have to do the opposite. And yes, open up. Yes, talk. Let it out. So during our events, we allow someone who wants to share their story to share their story because that's how people get the encouragement so they can speak up when they hear somebody else's story
Mm-hmm.
and not
Yes.
to put that tape around our mouths anymore.
Whew. Yes. You know what? I'm so glad you mentioned that. And I was looking at your website and I saw like the mental health pray.
Yes.
I thought that was so good because I know, for Black Americans, as I'm sure you know, the church is usually one of the first places that we'll tend to turn to when we're having a
Mhm.
difficult time. So I thought that was really cool that you incorporated that into your organization, to give people, a place where they can come and seek refuge non-judgmentally because you know um, that's really important. And I thought it was really smart to kind of tie in religion and Christianity, or prayer, spirituality in general, with that. Can you tell us a little bit more about mental health pray?
Thank you. And I'm glad you brought it up because I literally want to tear up because it's a struggle because the work is not for the faint, but also I
Mm,
feel like the support is not there. So
mm,
sometimes you're literally doing the work and God has called you to do it, but you're literally the person doing the work and you're trying
Mm-hmm.
your very best. And sometimes you'll be like, God, is this it? And he's like, yeah, you got to keep doing it. It's not
mm,
about the numbers. You got to keep doing it. So yeah, as a woman of God who also um, is a mental health advocate, I thought it was important. Like, let's come together because I would get a lot of people who would reach out about family members, suicide, and things of questions. I'm like, let's put in our prayer requests. I would bring a
mm.
guest speaker and we would touch on a topic. And at the end, we would pray. And it was like, listen, I can't get into the politics. This is not just for, this is not for everyone. If you want to pray, you need prayer, you want to touch on a mental health topic, this is for you. Like sometimes people could judge you, like, oh my gosh, why are we praying? I I know there are people who feel like they don't know what to do with their family member who doesn't want to go to therapy. They don't want to take any medication and they can't force them and they just need a prayer. I can't forget about them. And
Yes.
that's
Mm-hmm.
the work that so literally I'm on a little break with it, but I'm trying to see how we can bring it back because it's in my heart to do, but the support, and like I said, I'm so glad that you brought that up because there's so many ideas to come together. But honestly, without the funding, without the support, is the vision. But when we have work to do, we still have to do it
Mm,
and
Mm-hmm.
continue.
yes. Yes, I'm telling you, it is a call to service. I work in
Mhm.
the helping professions as well, so I understand. I've always worked with marginalized groups, people that always need extra support. So I totally get where you're coming from.
Yes. So before Elise goes, we have to get you to share your social media handles. We'll also have it, of course, on the screen as well, but kind of just let know people know where they can find you, your website. If you have something that you're working on that's coming up, feel free to plug in all of your goodness that you're working on in the mental health space.
Yes, we want to hear about all the exciting things you have going on.
Thank you. I mean, I want to thank you for having me. I'm on social media at Elise Antoine, where I'm a executive leadership coach. I use my platform to really encourage. So if you need a pick me up, you can go on my platform for that. And my website is EliseAntoine.com. Yes. I'm like, did I forget? Then we have Rip the Stigma. It's at Rip the Stigma on Instagram. And the website is the same thing, www.ripthestigma.org, and you can find different things. Everything that we're doing now, we try to keep it up on Instagram. I had a conference coming up. I had to push it back because the end of the school year is looking like this is where I had to be like, Elise, you got to think about yourself.
Mm,
Let's push it out so we can finish the end of the year without you being overwhelmed. So literally, we got to make some decisions. And I said, Elise, let's just push it out. So it was going to be June 3rd, but we're going to come up with a new date. But this is also a trauma conference that's open
ooh.
for the indigenous, Caribbean, and just blacks that we could just talk about trauma. And of course, Astrid, the Haitian traumas, where we had breakout groups with, we'll be discussing parent and child, special needs and trauma, marriage and trauma, women in trauma, men in trauma. So I think it's really important that we just start to unpack, talk, and heal. Let's get to
Mm.
the root of what's
Yes.
causing our trauma. And please, y'all gotta keep me accountable because I said before I turn 43, 25, I have to fully, I have to fully share my story because I've never had the opportunity to share my story about being sexually abused, and I think that's where my deeper healing is. So before I turn 43, in November, I'll be sharing my story. So I need, that's the journey of the deep healing that I need to do. But thank you so much for having me here. I love what you're doing. It's amazing. Sometimes it gets tough to really talk about the challenges, even when I see, people who die by suicide. It just, it's always in my heart, but I'm like, that could have been me, that could have been you,
Mm.
that could have been us. But we are here for a reason, and let's continue the work. So I'm really proud of you, and I thank you and your team for holding this space. I am honored.
Thank
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm so glad that you're, doing all the work that you're doing for your community. Um, and I wish you the utmost success with everything that you have coming up.
yes.
Thank you so much. You too.
Yes. You know I've been supporting you and I'm like fighting back the tears.
I know, because we just know our journey. Yes,
Yes,
absolutely.
yes. She was one of the panelists when I had my first event in New Jersey, because Jersey girl over here. She
Yes.
was connected through Marlene, who's also a
Mhm.
social worker in New Jersey. And so, just thank you for supporting me, my journey from before until now. I'm so appreciative, and I hope we can partner on something.
We will. And this is what the road is about. We have to support each other in the work that
Hmm.
Mm,
we're doing
hmm.
because when you go up, I go up. When I go
Hmm.
up, you go up. So we're in this
Yes.
together.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so
Yes.
much
Thank
for
you.
joining
Thank you
us.
so
It
much
has
for
truly
having
been a
me.
pleasure.
Likewise. Wish you the best of luck and keep me posted with everything.
Thank you.
We will.
So
Yes.
for our spotlight segment, we like to give recognition to an individual who has passed away from suicide. And for today, we are spotlighting Cheslie Kryst. She was a former Miss USA, a TV correspondent. She was an attorney, and she died by suicide on January 30th, 2022. And I actually remember this day because I was working at a hospital doing peer recovery work, and I couldn't focus on my patient. I don't know why. Like, her story just, gosh, it made me so sad.
I know.
All right, so
I'm glad you moved there because I'm over here about to cry. Crying.
yes,
all day.
girl, I know.
Oh, God.
So, for our resource segment, we like to highlight an organization that is doing great things in the community. And for today, we are going to do Rip the Stigma, which is Elise's organization. And again, as she mentioned earlier, it's about, getting people able to share their stories because there's a lot of power in being able to voice your pain. And you'll find a lot of healing in that. So check out Rip the Stigma. It's ripthestigma.org. There's tons of resources on her website. Definitely go over and support.
Yes. And so moving right along into our next segment, the new one.
Yes.
I'm excited about this one. The Community Change Maker segment, where we will, as I mentioned before, we highlight mental health professionals, especially with an emphasis on Black mental health professionals, because we want to make sure that people of color know that there are amazing therapists, social workers, psychiatrists, peer support specialists that look like them. A lot of times we feel more comfortable
Right.
when we talk to people who look like us. I feel like for me, that's what it was. Like, my therapist is a Black woman, and that's not to say that someone not of color can't have an impact. But I think there is power when you work with. It's a unique experience, and it's very powerful when you work with somebody who looks like you. So our community change maker spotlight is
Yes.
Miss Sharon Lawrence of Selah Wellness and Therapeutic Services, where she accepts clients in Florida as well as Maryland. She sees individuals, couples, but she focuses on being a therapist for therapists. Like, a lot of times people don't think like a therapist would need a therapist, but just like a doctor needs a doctor
needs a doctor. They can't write their own scripts.
Right.
It's unethical.
That's illegal.
That's illegal and unethical.
So she prides herself on being a therapist for therapists and those in the helping profession, so such as police officers or teachers. She wants to make sure that people who are constantly giving of themselves on a daily basis, that they are practicing self-care, that they're taking care of their mental health. And so you can learn more about Sharon, and you can visit her practice, myselahwellness.com, which will also be in the show notes if you're watching on YouTube. All of any links or anything that we mentioned, you will have access to that. So My Selah Wellness, Selah is SELAH, myselahwellness.com. And now we are moving along to self-care segment.
It's a new segment too, y'all.
It's a new segment too that we literally just added like 2 days ago.
Yes.
So for self-care, we will just, again, as I've mentioned earlier, just kind of talk about what we have been doing to practice self-care, what we plan to do in reference to practicing self-care, but we'll also in this segment use it as an opportunity to highlight certain organizations or like products that really promote self-care as well. So I'm gonna let Jordan, I'm gonna put the spotlight on you. What have you been doing for self-care, or what do you plan to do for self-care?
So for self-care, I'm planning on getting some good reading time in, y'all. Like, I stopped reading after undergraduate because I was tired of reading. But I've been picking back up. I read a lot of books during the pandemic, and we actually went to a super cool bookstore here in Baltimore City.
Oh, yeah.
Black owned. I'm going to shout y'all out because I had an amazing experience there.
Yeah. Is it vinyl and papers?
Vinyl
saying
and
books.
pages.
Oh, vinyl and pages.
Vinyl and pages, yes. It's on North Howard Street and Black owned. The owner is very, very sweet. He actually owns a tea shop right next door.
Mm-hmm.
The tea was slamming, y'all. But I picked up 2 books, and I'm really excited to dig into them. I'm still reading The Power to Die by Terry L. Snyder, which is the book about the experience of enslaved persons and suicide. So I'm still reading that, but I can't wait to get into some new books.
Ooh.
How about you?
Self-care, self-care. What am I doing? I have been taking a lot of naps, and I personally feel like I've been napping too much during the work week. I feel like I need to no, I have to shorten them. I don't want to say I shouldn't nap. They need to be shortened. They've been a little too long. But that also is because I haven't been sticking to my bedtime, and usually I do a great job. I'm usually very disciplined. Like phone goes on do not disturb 7:30. You can't get me till 5 when I get up the next morning. But I have not been sticking to that. So I have been doing things in terms of like, okay, get my nails done, but that stuff is like surface level. We kind of talk about like going deeper. Like when I don't sleep, I am very cranky. I have a nasty attitude. You know how people are when they get hangry? That's me. I would rather be hungry instead of sleepy. I'm just not a happy camper. So in reference to, I guess, what I'm working on doing is sticking to my bedtime. So, which is why I leave this studio,
She's gonna be in the bed, y'all.
I'm gonna be in bed and make sure I'm not texting you. I text Jordan ideas for the podcast or who we could interview or something we gotta buy
At midnight.
At midnight.
Girl, aren't you supposed to be asleep?
So yeah, so my thing that I'm working on is getting back to a sleep schedule, but also taking a nap during the middle of the workday is fine. Like, you know, a 30-minute nap so I can kind of refresh because I do wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I do need a nap in the middle of the day because that's a very long day. So yeah, that's me for self-care, and you can take it away for our last segment, which is our moment of inspiration.
Yes. So for our moment of inspiration, it comes from the Oprah Winfrey, and it's turn your wounds into wisdom. And I will say that that was one of the driving forces behind my mental health journey. I always had the thought that I didn't go through all of this for nothing. Like, there's a reason that I somehow managed to, endure the things that I've endured. And I just had this utmost faith that I would be able to help people in some way. And oh my gosh, look, now we have a podcast talking about suicide. It really came full circle. But I do believe that you can like turn a blessing out of mess. What is it? Turn your
mess into a message.
There you
turn
go.
your test into a testimony.
Yes, yes. So this really resonates with me. Definitely a full circle moment for me. And I just want you all, if you're going through something, if you're experiencing some challenges, you aren't going through them for nothing. It's not for naught. Just keep pushing on.
Yeah, I think you got it. So,
all right.
That wraps up another episode of Black People Die by Suicide 2 podcast. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll catch y'all on the next episode.
Yes, see y'all in 2 weeks. Peace.
This episode was sponsored by the Mental Health Empowerment Agency, where its mission is to dismantle the mental health stigma and raise awareness of suicide prevention through curated events, individual and group peer support, digital and social media, and educational trainings.